Hi guys, my name's Rebecca, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the book of Job. So Job is a book in the Old Testament, and it talks about suffering and also about the character of God and God's justice in suffering, which seems like a really relevant topic right now with everything going on. And I know it can be easy to wonder why so many things are going wrong this year. People are getting sick, things are getting canceled, many people are losing their jobs, and this pandemic was unexpected and seems to have come out of nowhere to a lot of us. And so it can easily raise the question, why is God allowing this, and how can things like this happen if God is good and just? So the book of Job starts off with describing Job as righteous and wealthy, and he gives to the poor. He has tons of land and animals, a lot of kids, and in the court of God, an accuser comes forward and says, if Job did not have all these things, then he wouldn't be worshiping God. And so God says, God knows that he still would, and so he allows the accuser to take away Job's animal and his children and then his health. And three of Job's friends come and try to reconcile his suffering with the justice of God. And they come to the conclusion that Job must have sinned since God is a just God. But Job asserts his innocence. And Job tries to figure out why this suffering is happening. And he comes to the conclusion that God must be unjust. But then that conclusion scares him because he wants to live in a world where there's a just God. And then Elihu, a younger friend, argues that God is just, but suffering may be due to a number of reasons, like to build character or to warn of future sin, and he says that they're not in the position to say that God isn't just. And then God shows up and basically takes Job on a virtual tour of the earth, and he asks him a bunch of questions like, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place? Who has cut a channel for the torrents of rain, and a way for the thunderbolt, to bring rain on a land where no one lives, on the desert, which is empty of human life? And this goes on for an entire chapter. And God is pretty much bringing up the point that the world is very complex, and Job only has the perspective of just his life, like a tiny piece of the entire earth, but God sees everything. And God basically states that carrying out justice in our world is completely complex. It's never black and white, and Job's not in a position to understand it. And then God describes two giant monsters. He describes one of them is like a sea creature and one lives on land. And of the one that lives on land, he says, its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs are like bars of iron. It is the first of the great acts of God. Only its maker can approach it with the sword. And so pretty much his point is that this creature is wild and dangerous, but it's also good, and it's his creation. And he kind of makes that point about the earth, and the earth is beautiful and it has order and goodness, but it's also not perfect, and it can be wild and dangerous. And God doesn't explain why there's suffering in the world, but instead he says that we live in a world that is not designed to prevent suffering, and God asks Job to trust in his wisdom and character. And then God reaffirms the way that Job responded to his suffering, and that it was good that he came to God in honest prayer. And in the end, God blesses him with all of his possessions back, twice as much. And this isn't a reward for Job for passing the test, but it's just a gift out of God's kindness. And overall, the book of Job invites us to trust God's wisdom when we do encounter suffering, and to bring the grief and pain to God, and to trust that he cares and knows what he's doing. And I think this is just really relevant. It can help give us perspective on why some of these things are happening, and just to trust God and to lean on him during this time. So I hope that encourages